So the first question, which sounds a little bit kind of obvious, is to kind of think about what motivation means to you. And I will ask you in a minute because I think motivation means different things to different people. So it's well worth us thinking, hmm, when we talk about motivation, what does it mean to you? So I'll come back to that in a second, but I just wanted to run through the flow of the 45 minutes. So a quick welcome. We're going to talk about what is motivation and why does it matter, particularly in teams. We'll take a quick look at the 9 motivators that MAPS measures. And then we'll talk really briefly about the link between insights discovery and MAPS, because I believe that there is a strong one and they complement each other beautifully. And Ali, you probably had an insights profile from us as well. We are then going to focus on what a map for a team looks like and what it shows, thereby showing you the benefit of why would we bother looking at a team in the context of motivation, and then a bit about, so how can you use this after today? So that's an ambitious plan for 45 minutes, but I think with a small group, we can probably get through it. So I'm going to take you back to that question. What does motivation mean to you and why does it matter? So given there's only 3 of us, feel free to come off mute and just tell me. But when I say that word, motivation, what does that bring up for you?
Desire and energy to move forward.
Yeah, that's some great words. Desire, I'll come back to. Energy, also really important because energy is invisible. And I also think motivation generally is an invisible concept. Ali, how about you?
Yeah, I think just the drive and enthusiasm.
Oh, that's a nice addition. Yeah, enthusiasm. Yeah, what gives me that little bit of extra sparkle, maybe? Like, where does that come from? Probably motivation. Pooja, how about you?
Stimulation or
Oh,
inspiration.
okay. Yeah, absolutely. So what is the concept of feeling inspired to do something?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And we've just had someone else join us, which is lovely. Welcome. So why does it matter then? Like, why would we look at motivation in the workplace? Sounds like a silly question, but I feel like it's largely unanswered because I think organizations don't look at it enough. So why does it matter? Motivation.
For me, if you've got somebody who's motivated, they're going to give you more than the 100%. And as long as somebody is on the positive side of 100% and you're getting more than expected, as an
Yeah.
organization, you're going to win. So for me,
Yes.
it's really important to have people that are motivated because they feel valued and valuable, and then you get more from them because of that.
Exactly. I think that extra effort thing, there's loads of studies out there that engage and enthusiastic and motivated employees give more. They give that extra little bit of effort in the job and to the workplace. It's interesting, though, that we measure engagement in many, many organizations, and we've been doing that for many, many years. But I don't know too many organizations that know how to measure motivation. And that's what we're going to look at today. So they might measure engagement or what they think engagement looks like. I think we can measure it more specifically around motivation. So there's a couple of really important things that I'd like to say about motivation. Number one, it's invisible. So you don't necessarily know by walking through an office or by jumping on a Teams call with your team who's feeling motivated and who isn't. There are some behavioral clues, but motivation in itself isn't a behavior. And often people can mask what we know about behaviors, we can mask how we're really feeling. So motivation is unseen. It's something that's kind of like a little undercurrent that runs through people as an energy. And to link to that, it's the energy which drives performance. So if we're feeling good about ourselves, if we're feeling good about the place that we work, if we do have that enthusiasm, Ali, and that kind of inspiration, Pooja, we definitely want to do more. So it does drive enhanced performance, let's say. So not just the minimum performance, but enhanced performance. And I think it's really important to say that without motivation, nothing happens. It sounds so simple, but I know on the days when I feel motivated, I get loads done. And on the days when I'm a little bit, well, I just can't. So my productivity is poor. So it's really important to acknowledge, well, how do I know when I'm feeling motivated and when I'm not, other than just kind of going, oh, how do I check with myself? So I mentioned at the beginning, I believe there's a link with insights, discovery, and maps, and I think it's really important to look at it at the top of the call. And we've got a simple performance triangle because what we know about high performance for either an individual or a team is that 3 elements are required. The first element, which organizations are brilliant at measuring, is the what an organization does. So typically organizations are great at the what, because this is the vision, it's the direction, it's the goals. We've been performance managed for years and years and years, and it usually has a focus on what we do. So whether that's OKRs or objectives or KPIs or targets, whatever it is, organizations usually reward performance based on what. Some organizations also manage to get the second point in, and they begin to look at the how. So how do I behave? What are the skills that I use, that I bring to that job that no one else brings? And I think that's where insights discovery pops in. So I think the what organizations kind of know how to take care of, and they're pretty good at it. Corporate businesses are very, very good at the what. They're getting better at the how. Some are really good at it, but they're getting better at the how, looking at, okay, well, let's value each individual. Let's value bringing the whole self to work. You probably have heard that phrase before. I know I was with a client company yesterday, and that came up quite a lot. So we were talking about motivation. So we're getting better at looking at how, and models like insights discovery have been around a little while to help us. The third point, though, which I think is critical, I can fully know what my job is, and I can fully know myself well enough to know that I'm going to do it with my levels of energy and enthusiasm and drive that come from my combination of sunshine yellow and fiery red energy. However, if I'm simply not feeling it, if I'm just a little bit lackluster, or if that energy is just really low and my resources are really diminished, why would I bother? And I think that's the third element of this performance triangle that organizations are waking up to. They're realizing we need to cover off the why. We need to have perhaps a sense more of bigger purpose. So what's the purpose of our organization, and how do our employees connect to it? Also, that individual levels of motivation. And I think this is where MAPS comes in, because it tells us why people want to bother. It gives us the clues as to what wakes people up, what gets them going in the morning, what gets them out of bed. So in terms of a motivational map itself, it looks like this. Jonathan, if you haven't had one, I'll get one for you. I think Ali and Pooja have had one. And the model itself looks like this. So it's a 9 motivator model. It's split into 3 clusters. We have the green relationship cluster, the red achievement cluster, and the blue growth cluster. Now, those are not in any way related to the insights discovery color energies. So it's worth me saying that, because we do so much work with insights that people are like, oh, director's red, and it's also red in the model behind me. So there must be a link. And maybe, but remember, we're not talking about behavior. We're talking about motivation, which is unseen. Behavior is visible. We usually can spot it. And it's worth saying that the model is drawn in this way for a very specific reason, because those relationship motivators, and Ali, if you found your profile, well, we can, you can have a look at it, and some of this might chime a little bit with your profile. The relationship motivators, so friend, defender, and star, which we'll talk more about in a minute, all relationship motivators are more past focused. So they're more focused on the sense of who you are on the inside and what you've brought with you to this point in time. So they're a grounding set of motivators based on what's happened in your past. The achievement motivators, so as we move, from left to right across the page, are more about getting things done and doing things in the moment. So these are more present focused motivators, people focusing on what's happening today, what productivity may be, or what am I getting done today? That cluster, the red cluster, what's happening right now. And then the growth cluster focuses on, unsurprisingly, the future. So people motivated largely by those growth motivators of spirit, creator, and searcher are more focused on what's possible and what's coming next than they are on what's been before and where I stand right now. And that's, I think, really important when we start to look at the context of what do each of these 9 motivators mean. So I am going to put them up in order for you. And I just want you to have a quick read of these little statements, because in a second, I'm going to ask you, based on very little information, which of these motivators do you think might be describing you? And Ali and Pooja, you may already know if you did a map, or that it may have changed since you did your map, because I think it was a little while ago since you saw Stephen. So we've got our relationship motivators based in the past, our achievement motivators based in what's happening right now, and our growth motivators focusing on more what's coming in the future. So have a read. I'll stop talking for a second. And then maybe if you could tell me a top 2 or 3, if you might know, if you're attracted. I use that word carefully but meaningfully, like what's drawing you. These are an energy, don't forget. Which 2 or 3 are you like, yeah, I like the sound of that one? And which one, because there's usually at least one that you kind of don't like, that you think, no, I wouldn't get out of bed for that. That's not what I'm here for. So whenever you're ready, give me a top 2 or 3 and a bottom one. Lee, have you got yours? Or you might know them.
So I think from the relationship motivators, it would be the friend would
Mm-hmm.
resonate highly with me,
Mm-hmm.
and very much with my team.
Yeah.
For the achievement, probably the expert,
Yeah.
and the knowledge based, and then the growth, probably the searcher. So
Yeah.
there's a point to
Thank
what
you.
we're doing.
Yeah. And is there one from the group of 9 that you think you probably don't need or you wouldn't seek?
Probably the builder.
Yeah, okay. Yep. It's interesting. People have really interesting views about builder because it's the money one. And money's a little bit kind of, it's a little bit kind of, I don't know. It can be a hygiene factor. It's not a hygiene factor in motivational maps, but it can be, i.e. we need enough, don't we? Then when we've got enough, usually it's not a motivator. Jonathan, how about you? Where's your head going with this?
I'll go along the bottom. So star, the expert, the searcher,
Okay.
and then the one for me, I suppose it's the director that stands out because it's something that used to drive me, but now that I'm in my
Yeah.
own company, I don't need that anymore. So it's interesting how I
Yeah.
fit completely on that one.
Yeah, it's funny, I think director's really interesting. And with all motivators, something I haven't yet said is they do change with age and stage.
Mm.
So when something changes in our lives or when we're in a different phase of life, some of these are overblown of importance at a certain time, and then all of a sudden they're not. So, if you think about when you were trying to get on the property ladder, if you tried to get on the property ladder, for some of us that happened a long time ago, and things like defender and builder might
Mm.
have been more important at those times because we needed that stability and that financial security to make it happen. But then usually what we find is once we have enough, if it's not a core driver for us, if it's not a core motivator, it will drop away. So our motivations do change and mix at all times, which is different than insights. What I'd argue with insights is that typically, once people have measured their preferences, they tend to stay within an area. So our behaviors don't tend to drastically change over time.
Yeah.
But our motivations do. And that's why it's important that we pay attention to it, because it's not like, oh, I was once motivated by that, so now I'll be motivated by that forever. But no, we need to keep paying attention to motivation. And
Mm.
Pooja, how about you? What is your kind of top 3? You don't have to have one from each. You can pick 3 in one group if you
Yeah.
wish.
I'll go for the friend one in the
Mm.
first one,
Yeah.
relationship motivator. Then the achievement one will be the director or the expert, not the builder.
Okay.
Definitely
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
And then the growth motivator will be the spirit.
Okay. All right. And is there one that you don't like?
Um, out of the growth motivators,
Oh, out of all of them.
just the builder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I think some of us have a bit
Yeah, definitely
perception of
seeks money,
builder.
and so
Yeah. It's like, ugh.
material things. So
Yeah, exactly. But for some people, that is really, really important. And we have to be super aware of biases and of judgment when we're looking at motivators. I was with a group yesterday, and there were lots and lots of judgments, and not in a negative way, but in a, oh, that must mean. And it's really interesting for something like Builder to just ask yourself privately the question, what am I making that mean about someone else? Because it's okay to have Builder as a really high motivator. It really is. But if you're making it mean something, then that's a question you need to ask yourself. We often find with motivation, we do tend to judge different motivators if they're not the same as ours, because we have this kind of automatic assumption, I think, anyway, in life, that most people are like me and most people want what I want. And it's just not true. The world is way more diverse than that, but we've gotten accustomed to thinking from a as a selfish standpoint, which I think is something to acknowledge. It's just an interesting concept. So I've not given you much about the motivators. I've given you probably enough to work with, given we're only on a 45-minute call. So when you get your map, it kind of sorts out your motivators into order for you. So you fill out the questionnaire online, and then it tells you two things. The map tells you, it tells you what your motivators are and currently how motivated you are, which is really useful information for yourself and others to know about. Now, this is my most recent motivational map profile. So you can see that Searcher is super high for me. That's the one about making a difference. So that's why I do calls like this for free, because I can't make enough difference in life. The more difference I make, the more difference I want to make, the more people I want to meet that kind of I can help learn great things about themselves and others. So search is super important for me. Traditionally with maps, we do look at the top 3 and the bottom 1 because they tell us a lot about a person. You see that my top 3, searcher, friend, and spirit, are an interesting combo there because I've got some blue ones at the top. Those are those growth, future-focused motivators. But I've also got a green one, a past-focused relationship motivator, incredibly high in my profile. There's no right or wrong. It's just telling me what is important to me in the workplace. So spending a day with a group of people yesterday who are on a sequential program that I met a few months ago, and I'll continue to meet every month until past Christmas, that really tops up my friend motivator because I get to see and work with people that I know and like and develop meaningful relationships with them. Some of them which will last a lifetime and others which won't. So that tops up my friend motivator. But you'll notice in my profile, I have a little cluster at the top. So it would be remiss of us to ignore this 4th one, which is my creator. And that's the one about innovation and seeking out new things and trying to, kind of break the mold a little bit. So I have a really interesting combination there, and we'll come back to it later. Defender is not so important for me, and that's not surprising given I run a business and I have done for 13 years. I don't need stability. I don't desire stability. Don't get me wrong, it's really nice when it comes along for a little while, but it's more of a basic need for me rather than, to use your word from earlier, Jonathan, a desire. And I think at some point when you move from right to left along this graph, so Ali and Pooja, I'm not sure if you've got yours with you, but when you move from right to left, the motivators change from needs and potentially met needs into wants and then into desires. And I'd like to say sort of almost insatiable desires as well. So I don't need stability because I have enough stability for myself. I don't need builder because I have enough builder. I don't need star because I have enough star. It probably changes for me when I get to expert and director, which I might actually want a little bit of those. A little bit, but not as much as I want creator, spirit, friend, and ultimately searcher. So that's what an individual motivational map gives you, but that's not the focus of this session. There's a previous recording, if you want it, about individual maps. So do ask for it if you would like to see it. We're here to talk about team maps. But first of all, I want to let you know, because it's super important, that some of these motivators don't play nicely together. So we have these 8 pairings of motivators that you just need to watch out for when you're looking at your own or someone else's motivational map. Because they kind of, a little bit like oil and vinegar, they might not mix so well. Actually, they can make a really good dressing. And usually the person can explain why there might be some conflict or some opposition between their motivators. And if you're looking closely, you will realize in the profile that I just shown you, which is my own, I actually have what we call an internal opposition. So here, this pairing here, friend and spirit, if I jump back to my profile, friend and spirit are both high for me and they're right next to each other. So the question you could ask me if you were coaching me would be, hey, Elaine, how is it that you want meaningful relationships and fulfilling relationships at work, but at the same time you want to work alone, be autonomous, make your own decisions, and ultimately not be part of a team? It's interesting, but it makes perfect sense in my world because I run my own business and yet I build communities around me of practice that I love to be part of. So I get to be my own person on my own terms, which indulges my spirit, but I also get to do it with people I like, which indulges my friends. So the motivators don't play nicely together. It's worth us noticing that. And I don't know, Ali, if you've got any opposition in your profile, but these are the pairings that you need to watch out for. If they're high and next to each other in your profile. But a team map. The focus of this session is largely about teams. So let's get into a team map. Now you can see that within a team map, I mean, you get loads and loads of data within it, but within a team map, you get the aggregated scores for everybody. So this is a team of 11 that I was working with very recently. And what it's done across all of their motivational maps, it has added up the scores for each motivator so that we can get an order. And you can see that the team is relatively closely motivated, relatively. So they have a lot of similarities from expert all the way down to, I would say, the bottom of director. Those motivators are really closely together, but they have an extended need for searcher. So they want to make a difference. And for spirit, they want to do it in their own way. So searcher and spirit coming together is important and high for this particular team. So that's the first thing that you get in a team map. The next thing that you get is a shared motivator count. Now, this is really important because the first page, you could just think, oh, that's great. Everyone's harmonious. Everyone's got searcher and spirit high. That's lovely. But the shared motivator count shows us where we have those orange bars. It's showing us the number of people who have that motivator within their top 3, because that's what we tend to focus on traditionally. And where there's red bars, it shows us where that motivator is somebody's bottom 1. Okay. And that's really important for us to know, because if we were line managing this team, we would want to know that actually 4 people have got builder high and in their top 3, but 3 people, so almost the same number, do not share builder. So if we only offered monetary rewards and, competitive assignments and the things that builder seeks, which is that kind of clear goals and objectives and achievement, getting things done in a competitive way is really important to builder. But if we motivated our team like that, we would switch on 4 people, but we would absolutely switch off 3 people. So we need to know this stuff. And you can see that on most of the motivators, there's a little bit of a conflict there in terms of top 3 and bottom 1. Where there isn't a conflict, which is nice to see, is in searcher and spirit. So again, if we were line managing this team, we would know that we could offer motivation perks. I don't think that motivation comes from work perks, but we could offer suggestions or offer verbal encouragement using searcher and spirit terms to enable our team to feel more motivated. But this is a team of 11. So don't forget, there's only 7 people with this. It's not like all 11 are motivated by searcher and spirit. So that's super interesting. That's really good data for us to know. And then this is mind-boggling, but this is the team profile for exactly that team we were just looking at. So let me decode it for you. There would ordinarily be names in each of these rows. So each row here represents one person's motivator, and the percentage score at the end shows us how motivated they currently are. So I haven't had a chance to go into it in great depth for you because we've only got 45 minutes, and I've anonymized their individual motivation scores and their names because I think it's the fairest to this group of people. But where you see the red box, this is someone's top motivator. So everybody only has one red box, and that's their top motivator, and you can see the score for it. Where we see the orange box, that's their second motivator. And where we see the yellow box, that's the person's third motivator. So we can see the top 3 for this group by looking at red, orange, yellow. And then the motivator shown in blue is the individual's lowest motivator. And you can see that for some people, like this person here, 3, that's an exceptionally low score in the lowest motivator compared to the others. We've got a 7 and an 8 and a 10 and an 11, but we've also got a 16 as a lowest score. Knowing that this person has 3 in director could be really important for us, particularly if we're offering things that director values like promotion, hierarchy, leadership opportunities, power and control over projects or resources. If I was motivating that person like that, they'd be massively switched off with a score of 3 because it just wouldn't work for them. That person is telling us through their motivational map, actually expert is what they want. The ability to learn, to grow, to develop mastery in their area of expertise is what gets them out of bed in the morning. So we need to know this stuff about our teams. And I'll just refocus on the percentage score. You'll notice the person at the top here, oh, happy days, that person's feeling 90% motivated. So they're feeling like they get access to their top 3 regularly. However, the individual at the bottom, there's no judgment here, it's just interesting to notice, has only scored themselves as 30% currently motivated. And again, as a manager, would I be able to spot that? Would I have my finger on the pulse enough to know that actually 30% is a little bit of an emergency? It's a little bit of an action zone there. Like, I probably need to know that that person needs a bit of a boost at the moment. They need to feel more motivated to stay with us, because scores below kind of 40% suggest a little bit of a flight risk, suggest someone's probably thinking about leaving because they're not accessing their sense of core motivation for themselves. And then we've got another couple of other people here who are kind of low motivation levels. I'd want to be doing something with those, but I'd want to be topping everybody up. So I'm aware I've just thrown loads of information at you. I'm going to pause for a moment, just let that settle. Where is your head going in terms of what do you want to know next? Or have I not explained something clearly enough that you'd like me to go back to?
Elaine, just a question. That person in the bottom row with the 30% motivation.
Yes.
What is interesting, you've also got one of those where they have their second highest and their third highest are in conflict with one another. So you've got spirit and director, sorry, the first and their second, where
Yeah.
they could actually, so not only are they very low, but in their motivations, there's a potential conflict here as well as in how they've rated themselves.
Exactly. So the question is, what's their role? Like, what do we know about what they have access to within their role? Because it could be that a small role change could help increase motivation levels, or it could be that we've just got a square peg in a round hole. Or there could be many, many other reasons. Usually, when we see low motivation scores, so like I said, I was in the room with someone yesterday, had an incredibly low motivation score in Spirit, actually, which is the kind of Give Me Freedom one. And she could absolutely tell me why she had a low score. It wasn't an emergency, it wasn't a problem. People usually aren't surprised by what's in their motivational profile, motivational map, because they're living that at the moment. So she could absolutely, she'd given 2 out of 10 for Spirit, and she was like, I can tell you exactly why that is. It's because I don't have access to this and this and this, and I've been asking for it for years. People keep saying no to me. So she's getting more and more demotivated and more disengaged with that particular situation. And if her leaders aren't paying attention to that, she will leave in the next year or two, without a doubt. So it's really, really valuable information for the team. It's also interesting for us, Jonathan, and thank you for pointing that out, to notice where they have this opposition for themselves, but to also notice where there's opposition within the team. So, you know, for a lot of people to have expert as high and in their top 3, but for 2 people to have expert as really low is again really interesting for us to notice. And we've already had a quick look at Builder, where we know that from that shared motivator count graph, that it was high for 4, and we can see who those 4 are now if we had their names there, and it's quite low, and in fact lowest for 3 people. So again, we'd need to know that, because there could be a bit of conflict in this team about what's the best way to reward people, because some people will be saying, well, pay and bonus and promotion is important to me because Builder's high, and other people will be like, what are you talking about? Making a difference in this business is more important to me. And it's a really common combination. You'll see, coincidentally, that these 3 individuals who have Builder low have Searcher as highest. Builder low, Searcher highest. Builder low, Searcher highest. That's not uncommon. Most people who are motivated by making a difference are not motivated by seeking above average standard of living. It's just really difficult. There are some people who can do it, but I personally haven't seen it yet. Most people, if they have, and it's the other way around too. If Builder is high, Searcher is often low. Now I'm in pursuit of things, therefore I'm not in pursuit of making a difference. So yeah, any other questions from Ali or Pooja just before I move on? No, we happy? I can't think what my next slide is. Oh yeah, I've got a little slide on the difference between, or the link between insights and maps, because you know, if you've worked with Blue Canoe before, you'll know that we love insights here. So insights does describe behavior beautifully, but insights doesn't go to the next level, which is why we behave in the way that we do. Whereas motivational maps answers that question. So to go back to that little graph of people there, we might be able to spot why someone is behaving in a certain way because of a motivational risk or because of a particular high motivator in one area and a particularly low motivator in another. So yeah, it doesn't describe, in my opinion, I think insights is brilliant, but it doesn't describe why why am I sunshine yellow? Like why? Insights discovery wouldn't tell me the answer to that. So maps really helps us understand what we need at work, because I also know that, you know, we have some very basic needs at work which make work kind of doable. But then we have some other work needs which make work acceptable. And then we also have some work wants which make work pleasurable or enjoyable. And if we're only ever offering rewards at the lower needs level, and remember everyone's needs are different, we never ever get to that high engagement place of offering rewards to people to bring out their full pleasure in doing the work we do. And you'll have felt times in your careers where you feel really like, yeah, I'm loving this. This is absolutely what I want to be doing in the world. And you'll also know there are times when it's really hard to get out of bed on a Monday morning. The motivational map, as I've mentioned, is also more than 2D. So not only does it show us what our motivators are, but as you've got a glimpse of there, I mean, there is more detail in the profile. It shows us how motivated you currently are. So Ali, it's probably on page 13 of your profile. You'll have a percentage of how motivated you were feeling at the time that you filled out the profile. And what I'm always curious about, I don't really mind about the number. So on the previous slide, we saw that someone was only feeling 30% motivated. That doesn't mean anything to me particularly, other than it gets my attention. What I want to pay attention to as someone who wants to increase motivation in the world generally, is that number on its way up or on its way down? Because if it previously 2 weeks ago was 10%, then actually we're doing great things with that person because we've nudged their motivation up. But if 2 weeks ago that motivation was 80% and all of a sudden it's 30%, again, that's something that as a leader, I need to pay attention to that. I need to know what's going on, or I need to be curious as to what am I not providing that individual needs. So when it comes to current levels of motivation, I would always focus on, is it on its way up or is it on its way down? Because I think that's the important question to ask. Jonathan, there's something on your mind.
Elaine, just a question. What is the frequency of doing motivational maps?
It's a
Because if you're
great
watching
question.
up or down, what is the expected regularity with which you do it?
It's a great question. And I'd say there's several answers to it, because a budget is obviously a thing for most organizations. Maps themselves recommend getting a motivational map every quarter, so every 3 months, so that you can keep an eye on, you can track motivation regularly. It's priced at that point. So to be fair, a motivational map pretty much is about half to a quarter of the price of an insights discovery profile. So they are much cheaper. Whereas insights profiles, we know they're pretty expensive. You only want to really do an insights profile once every couple of years. Whereas maps is a lot more accessible from a price point perspective. So I would recommend doing a motivational map more regularly. And particularly if you're looking at your team, it's something you can bring into a team meeting once a year. I would say for our clients, for Blue Canoe clients, like Ali will know, she's met motivational maps on one of our programs. We probably haven't done anything with your team, Ali, but if we were, we tend to get inquiries about maps for sort of 6 to 12 months frequency. So we don't, we wouldn't be pushing someone to get their map redone every quarter unless they wanted to do that. So yeah, it's a great question.
And do we also share this with the whole team? So everybody gets their own map, but what's the sensitivity of sharing this with the whole team?
It's a great question. There are certain things that we would and we do share with the team, but there are certain things that we would not share with the team. So that percentage in the end, that is private. And unless we had full permission and high levels of psychological safety, we wouldn't share that. But we would share the order of motivators and the scores within those motivators, because you can imagine there'd be some real light bulb conversations, even if you simply paired people up to look at, well, let me look at your motivational map and you look at mine. people kind of like, oh wow, that's interesting, because these people all work together, and it isn't just a leader's responsibility to provide motivation. I think we can motivate at every level in a team and in an organization. So yeah, it's similar as we would with an insights profile. We never share profiles without the person's permission. We wouldn't provide data with names on it, but what we can do is we can provide anonymized data, particularly when we have enough within a team or within an organization. So with some of our bigger clients where we're in there delivering motivational workshops all the time for intact teams or for cohorts of leaders going through development programs, we can give them like a motivational profile for a level of leadership without breaking any confidentiality clauses. And we can give them an overall motivation score, but that sometimes it's an average. So you could have loads of 30s in there and loads of 90s in there, and it still pops out at like 60%. So, how would we know what the extremes were? But it's a great question. Yeah, we don't, unless we have explicit permission to do so, and we'd be breaking the law if we didn't, we wouldn't share anyone's motivational percentages. So yeah, the team's preferences with maps are different, and a team might be quite closely motivated or it might not. And that's really interesting to me. Like that team I was looking at just yesterday, group I showed you today, they're not closely motivated. So that for me creates some really interesting facilitated discussion about what do we do about that. And I do think maps and insights complement each other beautifully. We're doing more and more motivation work in line with behavior work to finish and complete that kind of performance triangle for a lot of our clients. So we're nearly out of time, but there's loads of benefits that insights brings to teams. Not insights, that maps brings to teams. And these are figures from Motivational Maps themselves, so from their head office. So they've done a few studies of clients, and they report that customer service facing organizations report 10% higher customer ratings, 21% greater profitability. Now, which CEO doesn't want to hear about that? Yeah. 30% higher productivity. That sounds nice, doesn't it? If like you said at the top of the call, Jonathan, motivation makes me do that little bit extra. Actually, motivated teams produce 30% extra, and 41% less absenteeism. Because if you think about it, we're giving people an opportunity to save themselves from a motivational perspective rather than going off in a crisis. And I think that's really important in this world of busyness and mental health pressures that we all face. There's loads more, and I'm not going to bore you with them, but there's loads more benefits, more relatable conversations, greater ownership of learning, obviously increased performance, reduced conflict, better performance management, blah, blah, blah. The benefits are endless, and I obviously am here to tell you that. But there's some important points to remember about motivation itself as we get to the end of our time together. It's very individual and it changes all the time. So just because I was once motivated by the thing doesn't mean I'm going to remain motivated by that thing all the time. There might be patterns. And interestingly, I was talking to another practitioner yesterday, and she said her top 3 never changes, but her bottom 6 motivators, they actually can fluctuate quite a lot. And that's really interesting. So that, as we do more with maps, we'll understand better the changes that occur. Sometimes things that people take away from one of these calls is, I'm just going to go and ask my team what motivates them, because they'll tell me, right? But the problem is, if you ask that question, well, what motivates you? They will usually give you a really big shopping list. And if you're their line manager, they'll usually say money. Oh yeah, I definitely want a pay increase and the bonus. Because it's a kind of loaded question to ask a team if you're their line manager. So the list they're about to give you probably isn't very reliable, because they're trying to please you rather than trying to actually engage with what does motivate them. It's probably better to ask a more future focused story question about, can you tell me about a time when you've been really motivated? What's been going on in your world when you felt at your best more of the time? That will give you a better answer than, we're going back to builder again, but my guess would be most people would not say, well, when I got that 20% bonus that year, because it's very temporary. It disappears, as we know. So how you can use it, maps make it really clear what you must have at work. If you don't have access to your top 3, people are often thinking about leaving. If your satisfaction scores in your top 3 are low, maps helps us understand what we absolutely must have, what are the non-negotiables. I spend some time reflecting on that, and we'll send you the recording which will have the slides in it if you want to have more of a think about it. Consider your own and your team's motivators. Consider where you're differently motivated than your team, because that's where the magic happens, is noticing those differences, and be curious about what's underneath other people's behavior. We often look at behavior, but we forget to go deeper. So why does it matter to people that some things get done before others, and why is that motivating or not for them? So I'd think about that. The motivation is a hidden, invisible, energetic level, which, without sounding too spiritual, that's what motivation is. We can't harness it. We have a couple of books. If you want them, we're selling them at the moment with competitive rates. So we've obviously got a stock of these, so we can sell them to you cheaper than Amazon. So if you did want to read a bit more about the topic of motivation, James Sale, who wrote the Motivational Map, he has a great book. It's hardcover, it's very heavy, but that retails on Amazon about £32. We can sell it to you at 27. And Kate Turner's book, Create Motivation, where she talks about this performance triangle in a lot more depth, that retails online at £13, and we've got them here for a tenner. So if you do want to read more about motivation, then do drop us a line. You can email Claire, and if you want to buy both together, we'll drop the price a little as well. Email Claire, but what I will say is Claire's just about to go off on maternity leave. It's literally her last day on Friday. So email her before Friday if you want those books. If you don't, that's fine. It's just nice to see them out there. And do check Amazon. I probably haven't checked these prices for a few weeks. So Mapping Motivation by James Sale, Create Motivation by Kate Turner. And then people often ask about the cost. So for an individual motivational map, if you're buying one from us, we'd sell it to you at 85 quid a head. If you're buying a feedback session as well, so you want a qualified practitioner to talk you through your map, we charge £395 for that plus VAT. Contact us if you want to run motivational maps for your team. We'll happily quote you for it and provide a full day or a half day workshop for you. And economies of scale are available. It says here for 100+ profiles. Economies of scale are available from 10 profiles. So if you buy 10 profiles within an organization, we immediately drop the price by £20 a head. So if you're interested, we can send you our pricing structure for that. And for someone like you, Jonathan, if you're already a skilled learning and development pro, you can get accredited in motivational maps. It's about half the cost of Insights, and the maps themselves are reasonable to buy for you to sell on to your own clients. So if that was of interest, just let us know, because we've got an accreditation running here in October. So before we go, any last questions? Or if you need to dial off because I've gone over by a couple of minutes, feel free to. Or if you have any motivational questions, feel free to drop into my inbox. It's just elaine@blueganuco.com. I don't think what else. Oh, we've got 2 more webinars coming up. We've got a coaching webinar in a couple of Wednesdays' time. And in a few Fridays' time, we've got an Insights with Teams workshop. So we'll be looking at insights discovery through a team lens, not through the individual lens that we see here. Claire's also just dropped the link to my diary in the chat. So if you did want to talk to me about a team or a particular motivation issue that you're facing at the moment, feel free to book a call and let's work on it together. That would indulge my friend and my searcher, because I love working with nice people and I love making a difference. And that's it. That's all I've got to say about that.